Hey guys, it's Oluvids, and I just watched Kingdom Hearts Union Cross / Unchained Key for the very first time, and I want to tell you my thoughts on it. And in case anyone was wondering, I did know about the overall plot of the games already, but it was mainly from just a summary rather than seeing it play out, so I saw a couple of details that I hadn't seen before. First thing I want to say is that even though it took about 5 hours to watch it all, it actually didn't feel like an overwhelming amount of lore that's trapped in the mobile game. Like, there's definitely a lot happening, but it really feels like the first chapter in the saga rather than the whole saga itself. We saw the Keyblade War happen, got introduced to the key figures in that time period. Also, we learned about the general landscape of the world and the issues that they're dealing with. I want to say that I think the Union Cross section is definitely a lot more interesting to see play out, but there's still some things I want to talk about for Unchained. The Unchained Key section mainly brought you to the war, introduced the dandelions, and showed characters like Ephemer and Skuld. There's also, of course, Charity, who accompanies all the Keyblade wielders. They didn't go into the foretellers themselves that much, but they are around. Overall, I do like the idea that in the pursuit of light and purging the darkness, that uneasiness and distrust everyone feels ends up causing the world to fall. In the age with the most Keyblade wielders, it's actually much more fragile than the era where there's only 7 Guardians of Light. They're like a gigantic version of the flaws with Ericus. The over-craving of light only gives you more darkness. I actually want to mention that the player character is pretty cool. I think that some of their best moments do actually come from the pre-Union Cross parts. I like their friendship with Ephemer and how they ended up searching for him once he disappeared. When the player thought that one of the foretellers killed Ephemer, they were not having it. They fought and they didn't even care if they weren't strong enough to win. They weren't going to let it slide. I was also surprised to see that they can actually talk. I originally thought that the player was silent until like the end of the Key series, but there's a handful of scenes where they do say what's on their mind. Other times, though, your Charity might speak for you. Player is usually described as someone who's not very talkative, so I guess you could say it's a character trait. I do wish we could at least see their thoughts a bit more, but from what's here, even just an Unchained Key, I like them. I want to talk about Ephemer and Skuld next. Starting with Skuld since she has a smaller role. I think it's pretty cool how they let her spend some time to talk about how she met up with Ephemer and how her party dwindled down just to her, but then that causes her to realize that she's actually pretty capable on her own, as Ephemer once said when he teamed up with her. Her personality is nice enough, and she does try to stop the conflicts from brewing when the war is approaching. Anyway, Ephemer, I think, is really cool, and I wish we could see more of him in 3D. Maybe there will be some flashbacks in Missing Link or something, I don't know. But Ephemer is basically the extrovert friend that adopts the introvert, which is the player. He often describes everyone as easy to talk to, and is always willing to lend a helping hand. He's also said to be one of the only ones to ever really question the current society and what they do with the unions and all that. He even casually interacts with Ava, the foreteller. Granted, she's the easiest to talk to out of all of them, but in general, it doesn't seem like Keyblade wielders and foretellers really interact one-on-one very often. He was also interested in the Book of Prophecies, probably thinking they could find out what info is being withheld from him and the other Keyblade wielders if he'd looked into it. I believe that these qualities are why he was one of the first to be brought into the Dandelions. Next I want to talk about the Keyblade War, the Dandelions, and everything that comes in Union Cross. So, the Keyblade War we heard so much about in Birth by Sleep was actually pretty small in scope. Now, I don't mean small literally because there's a whole army of them, but the war is mostly from the player's point of view and their thoughts on the whole thing. While Ephemer and Skuld went off elsewhere with the Dandelions, player didn't join because they didn't want to abandon everyone. They wanted to at least try to stop the war and save people. However, it was all in vain because the war continued just as it was prophesized. They fought multiple foretellers in a row and got beaten down unconscious. When they woke up, there were many hearts floating, but there was also Skuld and the missing man himself, Ephemer, there to greet them. This kind of rounds off the plot point where he promised to meet up with Player again but didn't show up before. It's a nice scene, though Player is honestly really lucky to not have actually died, considering he's the only survivor. The original Key story ended with your character waking up in Enchanted Dominion with your Charity talking about how you're having strange dreams. And the camera pans over and shows Maleficent talking about how Sora can't interfere with her plans there. I'm not even gonna guess what their reactions were when it first dropped in Japan, but I think it's kind of funny how that's the original ending of Kingdom Hearts Key. Like, you got the whole Keyblade War and all that, and suddenly, oh no, it's Maleficent? You know, like, after all of that, I would think Maleficent would be the Luci or worse. I don't know what the reaction was at the time, but it was pretty funny. Anyway, I don't mean to do a whole play-by-play, so I'll be brief on the whole Union Cross section. As I said before, this is the part that I found more interesting of the two parts. It introduced some new characters like Strelitzia and Brain, as well as reintroducing Marluxia, Larxene, and Ventus. Ven, I think character-wise is similar to how we see him in the flashback when he was training with Xehanort. Someone who's weak. Though here, even if he is still good-natured, he does yearn to be stronger, as he isn't really good at doing anything. Lauriam is mainly used for his sister, Strelitzia's plotline. She was a dandelion, and yet she hasn't shown up even after the war was over already. I do feel bad for him because he's constantly searching for her everywhere, and eventually we find out that the darkness inside Ventus actually killed her, and Ven actually ended up taking her place. She was originally supposed to be the Union leader in his spot, so there's that too. Elrena was someone who was acquainted with Strelitzia, so she's helping Lauriam search for her during the whole situation. While I think Elrena is definitely very different from Larxene, she might not be as different as it may seem. When she's looking for clues about Strelitzia, her Tirithie does remark, "Hey, since when did you start caring about others?" So she probably normally wouldn't be involved in things like this, but either she got involved because she met Strelitzia before and has some investment in her fate, or maybe she's just into Lauriam. The answer is only her secret to know, I guess. In terms of the resolution of the whole thing, for now at least, it was cool to see Lauriam struggling with where to point his anger at once he found out that Ven killed her. Because on one hand, he was mainly puppeted to do it, but on the other hand, he did have the desire there to still be stronger and to end up in this new Union leader position, and that desire is what led darkness to even possess him in the first place. And Lauriam at that point did start to care about his safety as well, saying things like, "I can't lose you too," when Ven was standing up to darkness. The plotline with Strelitzia is still ongoing technically, but for now she's kind of a tragic character. Someone who's been watching the player without you ever knowing, and wanting to save you from the war, only to be killed before they could warn you. The scene with her and Lauriam was nice too. This might actually be the first time we see this much of a family dynamic in Kingdom Hearts. Strelitzia wants to team up with her big brother, Lauriam, but he won't do it because he wants her to learn to be more capable before he brings her along. It seems like he's better at straight up fighting with his Keyblade, and she's better at mainly magic. However, if something does happen to Lauriam, only being able to use magic wouldn't cut it, and she would be in grave danger. Now, Brain is a completely new character introduced in Union Cross. He's the type of guy who has a lot of wisecracks and remarks to make on people, which was fun to see in something like Kingdom Hearts. I don't think we've ever really gotten a character like that since, like, I don't know, Cypher or Hainer. Anyway, when he first comes in, he has a fedora covering his eyes. I think maybe it might be to get you to question who this guy is and what his deal is, because at that point in time, you don't know who the fake guy is, who is the person that is not supposed to be here in terms of the Union. So, out of everyone here, he's the only guy that we've literally never seen before. However, he is still a team player, and while he likes to keep it real, he also does trust Ephemer and goes about things in a mature way. Most of the time, he's just looking through the Book of Prophecies, trying to figure out about the Daybreak Town they inhabit, and of course giving his insight on how they should go about running it. Eventually, we start to see things like glitches, and eventually as things like the glitches, Strelitzia's actual role, and the darkness comes into play, we start to see his eyes, and really see that he actually has a lot of personal investment in what happens to everyone else. Even saying that he'll be the virus that derails the Master's plan, and things like that. We later learned that Ava seemed already familiar with Brain when she was recruiting him to the Dandelions, and she actually gave him the Book of Prophecies and the Master Defender as a last-ditch act of trying to change fate by not doing things exactly as the Master Matchers told them to do it. So for a while now, he's actually known how much actually hangs on his shoulders, since he could be the one thing stopping the dark future from happening. His story in Union Cross ends with him going to the outside world and staying in the real Daybreak Town as he tries to find a way to save everyone trapped in the data version. And he gave Ephemer the book and the Master Defender as he was originally supposed to have it, figuring that since he never ended up using it, probably meaning the powers of the Master Defender, that maybe he'll make a better use of it. Throughout the story, Ephemer and Brain were actually a pretty cool duo. Like for example, let's say Ephemer is the Hokage Naruto and Brain is Shikamaru, his top advisor. That's the type of dynamic they have. Anyway, at the end of the day, he's still a hero, of course, like the other characters, but his personality is what makes him stand out among the other ones. Now, Player, as I said, was stronger in the Unchained section of the story, because to be honest, in Union Cross, they're mostly just kind of in the Wreck-It Ralph world following the Darkling, which the Darkling are like corrupted Keyblade wielders. Anyway, I do like how the Cyabug integrated the Darkling into itself. It's nice to see the Disney concepts merge with the Kingdom Hearts concepts, rather than just sitting alongside them. Unfortunately, in my opinion, the Ralph world was kind of boring, since it was just the first movie happening word for word as I've seen it. Which, yeah, this is one of the few Disney movies that I've seen, so, you know, that was sad for me. I don't know how often Kingdom Hearts does this, since I haven't seen many Disney movies, but I wish they did have a bit more of a mix of things going on, rather than the player just kind of watching the movie play out and running around. But yeah, that's pretty much the main thing Player does, as well as getting eventually wrapped up in the conflict with Darkness and the new Union leaders. My favorite part, honestly, was not all that stuff, but rather when Ephemer came to hang out with the player after all the new developments and his new role as a leader. You could tell he was happy to see the player and just to hang out normally again after spending so much time trying to figure out how to run a whole society of people. So Player is kind of someone that helps bring him back to the days where he was just a normal guy, which is a nice role for them. Eventually though, Player actually ends up sacrificing themselves to keep some of the darkness locked away in the data world, and so that Ephemer and Skuld could escape. Now, one little problem I have with that scene though is that I think it's kind of silly that the player was able to trick darkness into thinking they were possessed by one of them. Like, I find it kind of hard to believe that darkness couldn't just sense them or, well, smell that player was in fact not inhabited by darkness. The fact that it's easy to trick them like that does kind of make them look a little lame and gullible. Like, this whole game has done a pretty good job with writing these conflicts so far, but that one just wasn't very believable to me. Anyway, the last character I want to talk about is Luci, and after that I'll just have some random thoughts. So, Luci is interesting to me. He actually seems like a pretty normal guy compared to literally any of his peers. Sometimes he's a little rude to the Master of Masters, but he often doesn't really mean to be. He's usually just pointing out moments where the Master of Masters is being a weirdo, which, honestly, yeah, that guy is kind of weird, so makes sense. But he always seems to be separated from the rest of the foretellers, even though he is considered to be one of them. They know of Luci's existence, and I'm sure they've talked before, but it doesn't seem like he's really with them that much. Anyway, yeah, I think what's interesting is that when the Master of Masters started revealing how messed up his plan is, Luci's actually really shocked and thinking like, yo, we can't just sacrifice all these people. Now, after he does eventually accept the mission from the Master of Masters, and we see him later, even though there's no voice acting in this game, I can kind of tell that something's different about him. He seems way less emotionally invested in what's going on than before. When Ava's trying to make sense of what's going on and what his role is, he doesn't even speak that much. He gives the shortest sentence answers and seems very neutral about the upcoming war. He acts the same later on in Union Cross. He actually even spoke to Darkness and Brain, and during that time when he's talking to Darkness, he does say that he's starting to get some of the things that the Master was saying. He definitely doesn't seem to like Darkness, but with Brain he does respect him to some degree. Enough for him to actually meddle a little bit with the situation. And to me, it felt like maybe he thought it would be a shame for a noble person like Brain to die here in the destruction of Daybreak Town. We see later that he is in Brain's body, but I think that he's more so borrowing his body, while also possibly sending Brain's heart to the future somehow. Me personally, I view this as interfering with the conflict, which is not something he was supposed to do, but I mean, I guess we'll have some more context when Missing Link comes out. Okay, time for some random thoughts on the whole Key saga. The art style for this game in Dark World has this little 2D chibi style that started all the way back when it was a browser game. Now, it's definitely not my preferred style for how Kingdom Hearts looks, but I think it does hit a little different at certain points. Mainly with the Keyblade War and the destruction of Daybreak Town, because it really hammers home that this is a bunch of kids that got caught up in this conflict that they really should not be involved in. Like, think about it, all these kids are child soldiers, literally. It's crazy. And it really shows it, because they look like children. And also Strelitzia dying right as she was about to be safe from the war, as she was going to go to help player. But also it does give some good feels too, with pretty much any scene between the player and Ephemer. Like, it really plays on the sincerity of the Kingdom Hearts series. Like, you see how happy the player is to be around Ephemer, and they're not afraid to show it. I think for certain moments like that, the art style does really work. Though, I'm okay with leaving it behind for Missing Link. Alright, so with the lifeboats, I just assumed that they'd kind of teleport you through time, but apparently this machine sends that little vessel so fast that it breaks the time barrier and enters a different point in time. Since it wasn't finished, it's advised usually that your body will be left behind because of the fact that you can't survive that trip. Which leads to the whole rule with the medium and the memory view and all that. I just thought it was kind of crazy that that's how it actually worked, and I wanted to bring it up. Also, there's the fact that the Keyblade War and Kingdom Hearts Key apparently wasn't the first one. I mean, that's kind of a big deal, isn't it? Maybe it's because I wasn't watching it when it came out, but I've never really heard anyone bring this up. Apparently, the Keyblade War started when I almost said the Melody Memory. Apparently, the Keyblade War started when the Master of Masters was a boy. And also, not only did he not have a master, but also, while the other people around him had Keyblades, he didn't seem to consider them as actual Keyblade builders. I think this is really interesting. Like, there's a whole extra history that we don't know about. And I'm not even talking about the missing arrow in Missing Link. All this time, I figured that the key time was the beginning of everything, you know? But this could easily be one of many eras. I don't actually know where the Kingdom Hearts universe begins. Next, we have the fact that this dude Brain makes sure his Chirithy was stripped out. Not only that, but it seems like him and his Chirithy aren't even that close, but he still made sure he was looking sharp. W Brain. And lastly, the last thing I have a thought on is just this screenshot. Just take a look at this screenshot right here. Just look at that. Look at that. Peak writing. Anyway, so that is my general thoughts on Union Cross. I might have some other random videos on Union Cross as we go up to Missing Link, maybe random thoughts on that, maybe expanding on certain things I may have said here. But let me know what you guys think. I'm glad that I actually watched Union Cross now because it gave me a better understanding of that story in general. I think it was actually a pretty decent story at least. So I'm glad that it's there. And we'll see how it works with the upcoming whole next phase of Kingdom Hearts. If it's really needed to watch that next phase or to play that next phase or what. Yeah, we'll see. Right now, I'm thinking that we might not actually need to watch Unity Cross in order to get the next phase, because right now, none of the Kingdom Hearts characters, none of our current cast even knows about this whole conflict going on. And even if, let's say, Ventus or Marluxia remembers, they're still going to have to explain it to everyone else. So, and again, Strelitzia might explain it to Sora and all that. So I think that while there's definitely a lot of important stuff in here, maybe it's not essential, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Anyway, that's going to be it for today. Thank you guys for watching. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I'll be seeing you guys next time.